I'm Jared Fry, General Manager of Medina TV.
Hi, and I'm Jacqueline Rinksmeyer, Executive Director of the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce. The mission of the Chamber of Commerce is to serve our member investors and promote business interests through economic development, business advocacy, and member services, which benefits the Greater Medina community. The Chamber is funded by voluntary membership from the business community. It is a not-for-profit, nonpartisan business organization, and we do not receive tax dollars to operate the organization. The Chamber does not endorse candidates, but strives to educate the voters on both the candidates and the issues. And we are pleased to partner with Medina TV to bring these interviews to you. This program would not be possible without this collaboration. So thank you to our interviewer, Jared Fry, and our producer, Matt Tomick.
And as always, the views expressed in these interviews do not necessarily reflect those of Medina TV or the Greater Medina Chamber of Commerce. We thank you for tuning in to the 2022 Candidates Forum and remind you to vote on November 8th. Joining us now in studio is Max Miller, a candidate for the Representative of Congress, 7th District. Max, thanks for joining us here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. For our residents and viewers at home, why don't you take a few minutes and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, happy to. I grew up in Northeast Ohio my entire life. Cleveland, born and raised, and when I was graduating from high school, I wanted to enlist in the Marine Corps. And at that point, my mother it was in the middle of the wars around 2007. She had some serious apprehensions because she wanted me to go to college, and she wasn't wrong at the time. I was one of those individuals that if I didn't go to college at that point, I probably would never have gone. And for me, I was okay with that. But I did end up going to college. I graduated from Cleveland State University, and my poor mother probably thought I'd forget all about the Marine Corps. That I didn't. I proudly went in when I knew I was going to graduate from Cleveland State, and I enlisted in the Marine Corps Reserves for 6 years in the infantry, and I couldn't be prouder of my service and to serve this country in uniform, really because I remember where I was on 9/11. I remember my teacher coming into the room. I remember he was inconsolable, and my mother picking my brother and I up. And I remember that I didn't understand a lot of what was going on that day, but it started to come into picture and into frame. And I took that with me throughout my entire life until the day that I signed that contract on that dotted line to serve our country proudly. Mm-hmm. And from there, I got involved in politics. I started volunteering when I got back from my active duty training in the Marine Corps, and it's something I felt very passionate about, and I wanted to make a difference. And so many people are in rooms like this or closed rooms, and they talk about how they can make a difference in the country, and I wanted to actually make a difference by just doing more than talking. I wanted to go ahead and help wherever I could. So I started volunteering for Senator Rubio. I was not paid for the first 3 months of that endeavor, and I moved to Washington, D.C., and after 3 months of working for him, he hired me as an advance lead, and I couldn't be any prouder of that. About a year later, I got a phone call from Corey Lewandowski, who is the campaign manager on then Mr. Trump's campaign in 2016, and I joined his campaign. And I couldn't have been more proud to do that at that time, because at that time, not too many people went to work for him. And when I went to go work for then Mr. Trump, everyone, told me that I would never work in politics again, that I'd have a black mark on my soul, but I knew that that was the right thing to do because the man's message was to take care of this country and the American people. And as a byproduct of working hard for him, he won the presidency, as we know. I ended up going into the White House, and 2 years into the White House, they made me the youngest director of advance in White House history. So I oversaw every logistical and operational movement that the president did while leaving the White House, both domestic and foreign. So I was in places like Iraq, North Korea, Japan, France, all these countries negotiating on the president's behalf on the terms of when he would meet with foreign delegations, and even in the United States. So I would oversee roughly anywhere between, it could be 250 people per event, to a couple of thousand overseas, and that was in direct coordination with the United States Secret Service and White House Military Office. And towards the end of the administration, I was made a senior advisor, which I couldn't have been any more proud to be appointed to the President of the United States in that capacity. And it really molded me into who I am today and my political ideology and outlook of just bringing fruitful policies to the American people that will benefit every American. Doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. If you're a Republican or Democrat or Independent, President Trump didn't care. care. He was all about how can we operate the government like a business and to make sure it's working for everyone. And I believe that over the last 4 years that we had seen during his presidency, people saw that. People saw more money in their checking accounts. People saw gas prices at historic lows. People saw unemployment, social and welfare and entitlement programs at historic lows. I mean, our country was booming and thriving, and it's just a shame that 20 months later, right, we're seeing everything that's being self-inflicted at 180 degrees in the wrong type of progress that we shouldn't be making. So.
Yeah. And let me start off with saying first, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Say that, and then could you take a few minutes to maybe explain what the role is of being a congressman, just to kind of talk your way through the role as you're looking to run for the representative Congress for 7th District. Just kind of explain for the viewers and the voters what that job actually is.
Absolutely. It's something that I don't think this district has had for a little bit, and that is an individual that represents their ideologies and that will never betray their values. The way that we've been running this campaign, we've accepted many trade union endorsements while also being endorsed by the NFIP and the small business community, which is very rare to get both of those individuals on your team. We've been able to do so because it is a true reflection of our constituency within the 7th District. I am going to be their voice, and that I couldn't be any more proud. But the way that I look at this is it's a team effort. I need to rely on my constituents because the best leaders that I ever saw, whether they were in Congress or in the military or any senior elected, publicly elected position, is an individual that listens to their men and women on the ground. And the best leaders that I ever saw in the military were the second lieutenants who would come in and listen to their platoon sergeant because their platoon sergeant knew the men and women better than this officer ever could have. And those were the most successful leaders, and that is who I aim to be. I aim to be someone who will sit down with our constituency, have the tough conversations, and hopefully some easy ones, but sit down with them and really, work through this as an educational process. Be there for them if they have an IRS issue. Be there for them if there's a veteran within our district that needs help with a VA claim. Be there for them when there's an immigration issue with the State Department they need to help flush out, whether it's an H-2B visa or anything else, or getting a worker permit for someone they may need labor within their company. That is who I want to embody as the next representative of the 7th District. And when I want people to look at me, I want people to be proud that there's Max, right? We're proud to have him as our congressman. Look at the job that he's doing, not only for the Republicans within the 7th District, but the Democrats and independents. And that's who I am as a person, someone who is just going to be there for them day in and day out. And I'm proud to say, as a part of our platform, I'm giving 25% of my congressional salary back to the district, and I'm setting it up in technical educational scholarships throughout the 7th District, which should be able to give 8 to 10 18-year-olds that next step into debt-free technical education. You could become a pipe fitter, a welder, a carpenter, a truck driver, you name it. And those salaries start from $60,000 to $100,000 right now at 18 years old. And I'm proud to say that, a part of my salary, which is your taxpayer dollars, is going back to the community in a positive way. I'm also never taking a federal pension throughout my entire life, as long as I'm ever in politics for. And I'm putting every single dollar I own in a blind trust so I can be as transparent as I can be with the people of the 7th, the state of Ohio, and the American people, because as we see, so many people go into Congress or go into the Senate. They may be worth nothing, they may be worth something, but sure as heck, they leave being worth 7 to 8 figures. That's not a public servant, that's a self-servant, and that is something that we are going to change on day one when we get into Congress after November.
You touched on a lot in that answer, so I'll try to dive into that. No, it's great. It led me to some great questions. I guess first, you mentioned the constituents and looking out for them. How do you handle that balance of the local constituents while also looking at the big picture of the state and the country? How do you work that balance if elected?
Yeah, we have to be present within our communities, and that is something that I haven't seen a lot of legislators do. And balancing that with all the federal issues that we see coming down the pipe, like the Chips and Subsidies Act that was just passed with reconciliation tied to it for $739 billion, there are competing interests there. Now, that bill was great for the state of Ohio and Intel. It was, and we're going to get thousands of jobs added. The trade unions are going to be booming as a direct result of it. But is it good for the people of the 7th? Is Intel coming into the 7th District? Does it truly benefit them? Is it close enough to where they can can go ahead and drive and schlep down there to go work at the Intel plant down by Columbus? The short answer is really no. But it's finding that common balance that you have with our constituency and their values of knowing what's doing the best thing for them. So, trying to get Intel within the 7th is what I would have tried to lobby for as hard as I possibly could. But it is a unique dynamic and dichotomy that we have between our constituency and the rest of the state and federal issues. But I promise them, and I promise anyone who talks to me, is that I'm always going to do what's right by them and not by myself. I would never ask somebody to do something that I wouldn't do myself, and to carry that out on an everyday basis. And that was one of the core tenets that I picked up in my time in the Marine Corps. But it's truly just listening to them, being there for them, being as helpful as I possibly can, and be their voice, because I feel as if the people of the 7th District haven't had a strong enough, conservative voice that are going to go out for them every single day to make sure that they get what they need in order to survive in the current economy that we see here today.
Mm-hmm. And you touched on your previous answer, helping the youth and students of today build a better tomorrow. How would you say with school funding? That's always been a big topic. Do you feel enough's being done in regards to school funding, or is there more work to be done?
I believe that school funding should be handled on the state and local level and have nothing to do on the federal level whatsoever. If I had a magic wand, I would get rid of the Department of Education probably as of yesterday. The only reason I say that to that extent is because when the feds come in and they dangle hundreds of millions of dollars over the public educational school system, sometimes, not all of the time, but sometimes these schools are willing to bend on things they know that they shouldn't, just to be a beneficiary of millions of dollars coming into their school system, which will help them relieve stress off of maybe the taxpayer that's within the city, maybe some other issues that are going on within that specific school or school district. But the sad thing is that you start to see other agendas being pushed by federal dollars coming into our state and local schools, and that is something we need to decouple, and need to decouple absolutely as of right now and as of yesterday. I believe that no one knows our schools better than the people who are in them across the country at a local and state level. That means that somebody who's up at Washington, D.C. at a very high and fancy level, they're going to start dictating terms and curriculums to the people on the state and local level that may not be based in reality. And we're seeing this pop up all across the country right now, and it is something that is incredibly damaging to our youth, because our youth is our future. Education, everything that happens, the root cause for everything in our country, to what I believe is based and rooted in education. And until we really have a better grapple and a handle on that, of how we can just teach the curriculum more so than anything else in our schools, then that's where we need to be.
Mm-hmm. And you speak about the students and the kids being our future. One of the problems right now that faces us is the issue of the workforce, and where are the workers right now? Do you feel that that's an issue that still needs to be addressed, or do you have thoughts on how we can move forward with trying to reestablish that workforce?
Yeah, I've met with so many people across the private sector industry and across the public sector industry, and one thing that is not unique besides high costs of gas because of our lack of energy independence is the labor shortage we're seeing in this country. Biden's administration continues to tout a low unemployment number, but if you go out just down the street and you drive by any business throughout this country, and especially in the 7th, there are help wanted signs. What we need to go ahead and do is, for the 2.5 million people who are in our country, for the most part, I would say roughly more than 50% or more do not have worker permits, which means that if there was a labor shortage here in Medina High School, and you had an individual who was accredited, who could be a teacher that met the metrics of the state of Ohio and passed the test, we could not hire them because they're not documented the correct way. And if you did decide to hire them, regulatory agencies would reach down our throats, fine us tens of thousands of dollars, and probably threaten us with jail time. We need to refund CBP and ICE and have these individuals come here the correct way. And the correct way would be work on an H-2C visa program. Work on an H-2C visa program with a cap that will allow immigrants who want to come here the correct way, in over 3 to 5 years, give them a pathway to citizenship, but put a hard cap on that. And that cap we would have to take a serious look at in Congress with the legislators to make sure it wouldn't hurt the American people. Now, that is the short-term solution to a long-term problem. But for right now, that is where we need to be, and focused on an immigration reform and getting these 2.5 million illegal immigrants, for the most part, out of our country, and process them and document them the correct way so they can make a difference. I mean, they talk about it all the time, 2.5 million illegals in our country. Then why are people still hurting for labor? It's because they can't work, and what's going to happen as a byproduct of that is that you're going to see tax fraud within this country to the likes that we've never seen before, with 2.5 million people who are now getting paid underneath the table, and that money, who knows if it's staying within our economy or being shipped back home to the other countries that they're from. It is something that we are tirelessly working on to try to find a solution to help our private sector individuals and to help people within the public sector, and especially within schools and the teacher shortages that we have. I mean, it's incredibly upsetting, but I do believe this is all self-inflicted. All these issues we didn't have 20 months ago that we see happening today.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things now that is facing, it seems like there's a lot of political division amongst, whether it's the politics itself and just amongst constituents. How do you see, because to get anything to move forward, you've got to try to find a way to work together to get things going. How do you see being able to do that and accomplish that if elected?
Absolutely. It's policy over politics, right? We need to focus on the policy. You are sending me to Congress to do what? You are sending me to Congress to make sure you have more money in your checking account, to have less regulations within our government that barreling down on public and private sector, and to live every day as an American and to be free. You're not sending me to Congress to be your social and moral police, and that's where we've gotten lost within this country. Now, I will say I am pro-life, but it is now a states' right issue and should be handled on that level. And all this political division and divide that we see, we just need to come to the table and talk. There's nothing wrong, with saying that that individual maybe doesn't agree with your ideology, but there's no reason that we should harbor so much dislike and in some cases real hate for the other side when, we start labeling people. I've had many people say many things about myself, but they don't know me. So what I say to that is, come down, please sit down at the table with me, hear why I am running for Congress and why I want to benefit not just the Republican Party, but every single party within our country, because at the end of the day, we're Team America. We're not just Team Republican or Team Democrat or Team Independent, and that's how we looked at it when we were in the military. I didn't care what political affiliation my brother or sister was to the left or to the right of me. I knew that if I cared more about them than myself, then everyone gets to come home safe at the end of the day, whether that's a training exercise or anything else. But that is the mentality that has been lost within this country that needs to be brought back to the forefront, is we're all Americans. Just because you think a certain way and say this person likes Joe Biden and I like President Trump or somebody else, that's fine. But we shouldn't have real dislike and hate. It should just be civil discourse. I want to go back to the days of when Ronald Reagan would get dinner once a week with Tip O'Neill, right? That is civil discourse. That is how both parties on opposite ends of the spectrum can come together to create and craft great policy for the American people, and that's exactly who I would like to be as the next representative of the 7th District.
And as looking for election, what skill set or leadership skills do you feel differentiate you from your opponent?
Absolutely. So in my time working for Senator Rubio and working for President Trump in the White House and dealing in these heavy negotiations, I'll give you an example. I was in the West Bank. And I was brought in to do the negotiations on behalf of the president for his visit to meet with Abbas. And they asked me if I would be willing to put the Palestinian flag on the president's vehicle, to which I said no. And this was almost like a movie. I got up from my chair after, Abbas's chief of staff said, we were no longer welcome to have the meeting. She then asked me to sit back down, and I held firm. And I tell that story because the optics of what would have come from putting the Palestinian flag, of which we do not recognize as a state or a country, could have been horrific to the state of Israel. But I tell that story because these are the situations that I was brought into. These were the dynamics that I was handling. I was put in pressure cooker situations, and on a day-to-day basis, I had to deal with these members. What I'm saying is I'm jaded in a very good way, and I'm very focused on the mission set, which is to do good for the people of the 7th District. I'm not intimidated, and I can't be pushed around by these individuals who think they can back me into the corner. And one of the saddest things that I've seen in my time in D.C. is you get individuals who who run for office, and some of them win, and they get there and they're very doughy-eyed and they get corrupted very fast because you see leadership come to you and say, well, you need to hire that person, you need to make that strategic move, and you're not thinking for yourself anymore because you're in a world where maybe you're not comfortable or confident operating in. What I'm telling you is that I know my ability to execute on a very high level in very uncomfortable situations, as well as the one in the West Bank and another one in North Korea, where we were brought over there for 6 hours in country to negotiate with them before Kim Jong-un met President Trump in North Korea over the line of the DMZ. That is why I feel as if I'm going to do the very best that I possibly can and earn the faith, trust, and confidence within the people of the 7th District to carry out and to be their true voice, and someone who is not going to back down and never take a knee when the issues get tough.
Yeah, we're speaking with Max Miller, the representative for Congress, 7th District. I want to make sure I thank you for taking time to answer my questions, but I want to give you a moment in case there's something I didn't touch on or something you'd like to talk directly to the voters about. So I'm going to turn the microphone over to you now.
Thank you, and thank you for conducting this interview. This has been great, and thank you for your time. When it comes down to this election, you want to look for common sense policies. Is it a common sense policy to tell the American people that's government driven but not market driven that you need to buy a $67,000 electric vehicle, that gas prices are almost creeping back up to $4 a gallon, that inflation is now at 8.4% and has gone up 0.01% after Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act? We see a southern border right now that is bringing over slave labor, sex trafficking, and drug trafficking into the state of Ohio, killing thousands of Ohioans and Americans across this country. The supply chain issues that we've been seeing underneath this administration. We need to go back to common sense policies, and that's exactly what I'm going to stand for as your next representative of the 7th District, and I will not back down until we get these things accomplished and work with you. Not just listen, but work with you on an everyday basis, because when it comes to this is an educational process. I know that I can't be the best legislator that I can possibly be without everyone's help within the 7th District. So I view this as a partnership, an educational opportunity. I hope to secure and earn your vote come this November, and I will not let you down or betray your values that have been done in the past. Thank you very much, and please vote for me, Max Miller, on November 8th.
Again, that's Max Miller, representative for Congress, 7th District, and thank you for your time today, and I wish you the best of luck this November.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your time as well.